Fog number 174 is Ben Teo. Ben played 7 matches for Queensland, all off the interchange bench, the first in Game 3 of the 2012 series. In all, Ben played 174 games with 3 NRL clubs, winning a Premiership in 2014 with South Sydney, playing a test for Samoa at the 2008 World Cup, and 16 Rugby Union internationals for England, plus 2 tests for the British and Irish Lions. Ben's final NRL game came in the 2021 season when playing for the Brisbane Broncos against one of his former clubs, Souths. In 2023, Ben started his coaching career at a senior level with Redcliffe in the Queensland Cup.
Well, Ben, what does it mean to you to be a Fog?
Oh, I think for me, I just joined in an elite class. Some pretty massive names in the game have played for the Maroons, and myself, I was born and grew up early in New Zealand, but come over to Queensland to sort of make a name for myself. And I remember getting in around the age of 17, and I qualified just before they changed the rules. But for me, it was, State of Origin was something that I always wanted to be a part of. So I live not too far from Suncorp, so my kids ride their bikes on Suncorp. It's a pretty good spot for kids to learn how to ride a bike, and they ride past my plaque a lot, and we see it a lot. So I suppose now that I'm retired, I always find myself walking around Suncorp looking at all the numbers, and just to see my name with their names is something that's pretty special.
Well, take us back to that moment in 2012 when you were selected for the first time. What are your memories of that day when you found out that you were going to be representing Queensland at Origin level?
Yeah, I think I'd been in and around the squad for a couple of years, and probably personally felt a couple of years earlier that I felt I was ready for it. So I was ready for whenever I got an opportunity, but also understood that Queensland were going very well in that time, winning series after series. And Queensland selectors and Mal were very loyal, which was a great thing for Queensland. So it was hard to get in that team. I had to really wait my turn, and finally got the call 2012 that I was going to be playing. And you can't really script it much better, but to be making your debut at Suncorp Stadium in Game 3 decider, it was pretty special. So, and I can probably say it was the first time that I could not really sleep the night before and the day of. Usually you take a nap, and footy players have a really good routine. That was the first time my routine was out the window. I just couldn't settle.
Nerves, expectation, weight of the state on your shoulders. What was it?
Yeah, I think there was all of those things. It was, the moment of making, your State of Origin, debut. Like, even when you just say it, State of Origin, it's different. But then, the pressure, the build up, the decider, it was all building up. So for me, it was just a huge moment, and I'll never forget that day.
Take us back to walking to camp for the first time. What was that like?
Well, it was a great opportunity to be around so many class players. At the time, the Queensland side was just full of Melbourne Storm players and a lot of guys who had had a lot of success, and they're your rivals, and now you're getting to be in camp with them and you're getting to room with them. I remember one time I was rooming with Billy Slater, so for me it was just to see him up close and see his preparation and see how he trains day to day. So for me, those were the things that were special. To walk in, and then obviously, walk in and pretty scared of Mal straight away. So
when it comes to the games, the 7 games, you started all 7 on the bench. How did you cope with that, particularly that first game, not being able to sleep in the lead up, but sitting there on the bench waiting for an opportunity to get out there? Was that something that you had to get used to doing?
No, that was fine with me. That was my perfect role. I think as you grow and understand that, we all want to be starters and we want to be on the run-on squad, but I knew what I could bring off the bench, especially in that arena in terms of, I could come on with some physicality and speed. I could play in the back row. I could cover the middle. If someone got injured, I could play in the centres. There was sort of times in Origin games where I did float around and get told, oh, you're on this side, you're on that side, you're on the middle, and that was my role. So it was something I was very used to.
What's your fondest memory from those times?
Oh, I mean, going down to New South Wales and getting a win, was special. But like sometimes now, I think when you're a little bit older and you think back, I wouldn't think back on the games as much. It's the camps. The camps sometimes make me laugh. Like, some of the stories and some of the bonding sessions we had and the training camps up in Coolum, and it just sort of, those are the memories, I suppose, that stick with me more than the games. Sometimes the games can just be so fast and physical and they become a bit of a blur. But yeah, a lot of really good friendships from those campaigns.
You've achieved so much in the game, not only rugby league, in rugby union, playing for England, playing for the British and Irish Lions, winning a premiership. Where does being a Queensland origin player sit in those list of achievements?
Well, I thought about it. I don't have any jerseys hung up in my house. It's not really something that I want to do or like to do. I think it's a part of my story, but it's not everything. But someone said to me, if you've got to hang up some jerseys that mean a bit to you, like, say you got to pick 3 jerseys, what would they be? And my State of Origin jersey is one of those. I think when you win a premiership, that's special. If you get to play for, your state in Queensland, that's pretty special. And then, obviously my debut international rugby jersey would be one. So it's right up there for me.
Well, let's go back to the start. How does a kid grow up in New Zealand, end up at Keebra Park High and qualifying to play for Queensland? Tell us about growing up in New Zealand and how you got to come over to the Gold Coast.
Yeah, like as I said, earlier, I played rugby union, I played rugby league. I was a player of both games, loved both games. Started focusing on rugby league, ended up in the New Zealand Warriors system. Had a tough time there with some injuries and got let go. And when you're from New Zealand and there's only one team and they've let you go, you got to go. You got to head over here. And for me, I was in a time where I was going to make it or not make it, and the opportunity came to attend Keebra Park High School. And for me, that just changed everything. Like, to come over here, the first thing I can remember is going on a camp to Bundaberg, and I never understood how someone could play on a field that looked like concrete. It was dusty, it was hot, and I'd never felt the heat like that before. So it was all a shock to me coming over to Australia, and then we started training, and all I can explain is it was hell. I'd never trained that hard in my life. So, coming over to Queensland sort of gave me that, kick up the bum that I needed about where I was at in terms of the level. And once I got to Keebra, things started to really blossom from there. I started to play really good footy. I got in shape. And then which led me down to the Tigers. And I suppose from then on, like, the closer I got to being a professional rugby league player, the more I started to think about what I wanted to achieve. If I was going to keep going up, what did I want to do? And in my mind, straight away, I wanted to play at the highest level. And when everyone used to talk in interviews, they used to say, the hardest footy to play is State of Origin. That's the hardest, that's the most physical, that's the fastest. So I wanted to experience it, and I think, for me personally, I felt that had I not come to Queensland and come to high school over here, I don't think I would have gone on and made it in rugby league. So I thought it was important for me to want to play up here.
You spoke about how difficult it was acclimatising there at Keebra Park. Was there any time in that process that the thoughts of returning home crossed your mind?
Never. No, never. Once I was here, I was all in. When I come to Queensland, I was all in. I knew that the school program was a really good program. I knew they had a great coach, famous coach in Greg Lenton. I understood that there were a lot of NRL players that come through that system. I was all in. But I just didn't understand that the level and how hard they were training over here at schoolboy level, in the heat, running laps. It was tough.
So a couple of years at the West Tigers because of their association with Keebra Park. So how did you then end up at the Broncos?
Well, when I went to Keebra Park High School, I got put on a bit of like a scholarship, and in the scholarship was a contract clause that West Tigers have first option on you. If they want to sign you, that they essentially get you. So had it been my choice, I would have gone to Keebra Park High School, and I probably would have liked to stay up here in Queensland. But when you get that tap on the shoulder and they want to sign you, you go do it. You know, at the time I was playing for Keebra Park, and one of our main rivals was Palm Beach Currumbin, who had a star fullback, Darius Boyd. So we played a lot of footy against each other in schoolboy, and I found out he was signed by the Broncos, and I always thought, I would have loved to have been signed by the Broncos. I'm a big fan, but my path is, I've got to go to Sydney. So I went to Sydney, probably understanding that's going to be my pathway, but if I ever get an opportunity, I'm coming back. So yeah, it was 3 years down there. I was playing some pretty good footy for West Tigers, and that's when myself and the Broncos got in contact with each other and made a deal to come home.
And what was that like when you returned to Brisbane to actually play with the Broncos and run out onto Suncorp Stadium as your home ground?
Yeah, that was something that, when you put it all together, that, I'd got my foot in the door in footy in Queensland. I'd been a supporter of the Broncos growing up, watching some of the old teams, and then to be making that move. I always say, it's a great thing for an athlete when they put themselves where they want to be. And that's what I did. I put myself in that opportunity. I wanted to be in Brisbane. I want to play for the Broncos. I remember lining up on the right-hand side of the field. It was myself, Darren Lockyer, Justin Hodges and Israel Folau. I thought, wow, that's not bad. That's a pretty good edge. And I'll never forget running out my first game out of Suncorp and versus the Cowboys that used to always be round one. And, you come out the tunnel and you just look up and you see people right at the top row, and you understand that, this is the big stage here.
Well, how would you like to be the owner of one of these? A Fogs Authentic Game Ball signed by Wally Lewis at the 2023 Wally Lewis medalist Reuben Cotter. Now, all you have to do is subscribe, like, and drop a comment below. And each week, gentlemen, we'll be giving away one of these footballs to one of the viewers of the Fogs Queenslander podcast. Well done.
Well, it's good to be able to hand them on to the general public who like it, as long as we don't get blamed for breaking one of Mum's windows when they're kicking it around the backyard or tossing it around.
But this will be framed in a nice
Reuben Cotter's name. Wow.
Do you know how to subscribe and like and do all that, Gilly? No?
Oh. We can help you, mate. We can help
you. Help me out, fellas.
The two daughters can help you out.
So we have one of these to give away each week until stocks run out, until Wally gets sick and tired of signing them and Reuben Cotter disappears. But just subscribe to our channel, Fogs Queenslander Podcast. Write a comment below and click that like button. Everyone goes into the draw, and we've got one of these to give away each week.
So then the move to South Sydney was a pivotal move, really, in your career. You ended up winning a premiership with the Rabbitohs, one of the most famous clubs in rugby league, not only in the NRL. A, how did that come about? And B, those 2 years, what were they like?
Yeah, that was unfortunate, really, like how it come about. I didn't want to go, but I had to go because there had been a changeover in coach. Anthony Griffin had taken over the side from Ivan. He had a very good relationship with a lot of the under-20s players which were coming through. I found myself in a position, sometimes starting, sometimes off the bench, fighting for minutes. It was Alex Glenn, Sam Thaiday, myself and Matt Gillette scrapping for minutes. And I think towards the end of my time, it was me and Matt Gillette were on the bench sort of scrapping for time. And I thought to myself that if I wanted to play State of Origin, regularly, like if I wanted to get in that team, I needed to be an 80-minute player. And I knew that wasn't going to happen at Brisbane anymore. I was just sharing the minutes too much. So I knew I had to make a move, which was going to be best for me. And never did I imagine that I was going to South Sydney to win a premiership. I just didn't think that was in the equation. I thought I was going to go there to be the outright starting back rower and the goal was to try and get in the State of Origin team.
I mean, there's a pressure of playing for Brisbane in a one-team town and all that sort of stuff, but what was it like playing at South Sydney, such an historic club that hadn't won a premiership for so long, and being in that team to win that grand final? What was that like?
Well, when I went there, I didn't feel any pressure at all, to be honest. As I said, I was just there to establish myself as a starter, but as I got there and understood that we had a very good team, started to understand the history of the club a lot more, and then as we got good and we were getting in the finals, and then I realised about the drought and how long it had been, and I didn't really imagine that they had that much support, but now I know, and I suppose it was a special time then, for there was a lot of long-suffering fans that got to witness that, and some, I've met fans before, and some family members of theirs towards the end of their life never thought that they'd see that day where South would win a competition, and it was pretty special.
Looking back on grand final day, do you have many memories, or it is a bit of a blur, or what can you tell us about, that, I suppose, the last 10 minutes and that celebration and that night of being, knowing that you'd won a premiership for Souths?
Yeah, I mean, that game's a little bit of a blur too. Obviously it's famous for Sam Burgess fracturing his face in the first hit-up of the game. But when you're on the field, you don't really understand that that's what happened at the start. You sort of play. It wasn't until a little bit later in the scrum realised that he was in trouble. But understood that he couldn't really come off. With the character that he is, it would have really not led the team. I think everyone would have felt it. We would have felt in trouble had he gone off. So he ended up toughing it out, and I just remember myself and him swapping between back row and front row, and I ended up playing a lot of that grand final in the middle of the field, and I remember playing 80 minutes, and it's one of those ones where everyone understands that playing in the middle is a hard job, but it's amazing what you can do when you're really motivated in a big game and you've got no other choice. So that's what I remember, and the other thing I remember is not many people get to enjoy the back end of a grand final because it's so close. But for us, 10 to go, we had won the thing. So to really soak up the atmosphere, and after a try, walk back and look around and wave to the crowd, it was quite a nice way to do it.
A main part of your sporting journey has been your time in rugby at the back end of your career as well. A number of tests for England, Eddie Jones involved in that, and also a couple of tests for the British and Irish Lions. I don't think people understand fully here how big the British and Irish Lions are they? I mean, they're coming again soon, but what was that experience like?
Yeah, I mean, the rugby experience was a great one because I played it as a youngster, and I never knew whether I'd taken that route, whether I'd been successful. And I think we can all sit back sometimes and say, I would have, At the age of 27, I left rugby league in my prime to chase it because I didn't want to sit at the pub and say I would have or I could have. So I just went and tried to achieve it, and played for England and enjoyed my time there. And then, as you said, I had no idea really myself how big the Lions were in terms of the tour and how many people come on tour with you. It was like a travelling stadium with you everywhere you went, and people play rugby union their whole life as professionals, as internationals, and never get a look in on a Lions tour. So for me, in my short time I was there, to get on a Lions tour, especially going to New Zealand versus the All Blacks at the time where they're in their peak of powers, and to draw a series, it was pretty awesome.
Who's had the biggest influence on your career?
Look, my father took me, to my first games of footy. I think when I was younger, my older brother played, so my father played football himself, so I suppose that's something that inspires you to want to do it. You do what you see, so when you look up in the lounge room and there's your old man's old team photos, rugby league team photos, it makes you want to play. So I'd have to say he's the one that influenced me to get into the game.
Is there a player that you played with in either code, at any of the clubs or at any level, that you look back on it now and go, wow, I'm glad I got the opportunity to play with him?
Yeah, there's been so many players I've played with, and it's funny, I used to play this game with people when I'd be overseas and say, who's the best player you've ever seen? Who's the best player you've ever seen, both codes and that. I always come back to this guy, Greg Inglis. I've never seen anything like him before, anywhere, in any code, in any hemisphere. I got to play with him, at State of Origin, but I got to play with him week in, week out for 2 years. And to see some of the things he did, I don't think anyone else is capable of that. And we see little, snippets of it in other players at times. Latrell Mitchell can be pretty impressive, and there's a lot of really good athletes. Israel Folau had his little stint, but I don't think I've ever seen the big game player for big moments like Greg Inglis. And early on in my career, when I used to play against him, I can honestly say he was the only player I've ever feared. I've ever feared lining up opposite to him, because no one wanted to get that fan. No one did.
Now, is there a player that you never got to play with, no matter what era it might have been either, that you would love to have had one game alongside, someone that you admired in the opposition, I suppose, that you never got the chance to play with?
Oh yeah, that's an easy one for me too. I think, Alfie Langer. I think I was around him so much in my career, but as I was a player, and he was part of the coaching staff, and he made me laugh. And used to watch his old videotapes, and he was a star. He was your captain. He was your best player. He was the life of the party. I mean, how do you get all those three in one little funny man? I mean, those Broncos teams were so lucky to have someone like him. And I always thought, if I could have played with one guy in one era, I would go to Alfie Langer's era and play with him.
You're starting a journey again now, a coaching journey. A, how has that been so far? You're early into it. And B, what are your aspirations?
Yeah, it's been great so far. I never thought that I was going to be a coach. It was sort of the back end of my career, probably putting all the pieces together, understanding that I've been coached by some of the best in both codes. In Rugby Union, I had some of the best coaches. In Rugby League, I had some of the best coaches. Tim Sheens gave me my debut. I had Michael Maguire, I had Eddie Jones, Warren Gatlin, just so many really good names. And I thought I started to soak up the way they went about things towards the back end of my career. So when I decided that I wanted to coach, not many people were willing to give me a shot, to be honest. That was probably, I felt I had a lot of knowledge and a lot to give, and I never forget, I sort of didn't know where to go with it, and I got in contact with some people who put me in touch with Wayne Bennett, and I asked him if I could just have a meeting with him, and he said, all right, if you want to coach, come down and chat with me. I drove down the Gold Coast to meet with him in an apartment, and he asked me all the important questions. Why do you want to coach? What do you think you can offer? What do you want to do with it? And once I had met with him, he said, all right, no worries, come with me then. And he brought me to the Dolphins, and he gave me a Colts side to coach for the year, while checking up on me and helping me with my journey and turning up to training sessions and watching, and then giving me the Queensland Cup side last season and the same this year. And I've been shadowing him for 3 years now. So for me, I mean, to be able to get that in at the back end of his career and to be learning off him is huge.
What's a bit of advice you could give to a 16, 17-year-old boy or girl who is in that position that you were in a few moons ago? What advice would you give them?
In terms of playing footy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose it's a life in general thing too, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I think my advice to a young player would be, you got to go where you're valued. Sometimes that means leaving home. I think everyone wants to be at home with their mates, and everyone wants to be comfortable, close to family. But unfortunately, it doesn't work like that in professional sports. So don't be afraid to go far away, and take a shot on yourself. Because, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But it's worth taking a shot. So that would be my advice to people. There's so much opportunities out there and we let it slip by because we don't want to become uncomfortable. But, I understand this myself. You realise this pretty soon. You go away, you chase your goals, come back, and everyone's still doing the same thing anyway. So what are you worried about?
And just finally, Ben, now that you are retired and you can look back on your wonderful career, how do you look back on your achievements in both codes?
Yeah, I think I'm happy with how it all panned out. I think if I'm honest, I squeezed everything in that I wanted to. Would have loved to have won more competitions. And that's just you can get a bit greedy sometimes. Look, there's guys that never win a competition. For me, I always wanted to win a couple. I won one. So that's something that, you always look back. And there was a couple of teams where we were close, and those fine margins, it didn't work out. But I think I take all the learnings. I take all the learnings from a long career. I'm happy where it ended up because there was a time there where I didn't think it was going to go anywhere. And I was just, how would I put it nicely, an overweight kid coming off the back of surgery with no options and needing to leave New Zealand and find an opportunity. So from there to here, I'm pretty happy with how it went.
Ben Teo, thanks for your time.
Thanks.
Thanks for watching this episode of the Fogs Queenslander podcast. If there's a Fog you want to hear from, leave a comment to let us know. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our videos.